Welcome to the Femme Futurists Society, a series of conversations championing some of the incredible women that are actively shaping the future. Each of these women represent the trailblazers, the activists, the change makers, rule breakers, thought leaders, innovators, and disruptors among us, helping expand our belief in what's possible so we are all inspired to dive in and make it happen. Our guest today has 15 plus years of international experience in marketing, innovation, business strategy, strategic foresight, and more across fast-moving consumer goods, finance, and entertainment. At the Walt Disney Company, she led the strategic foresight team for the UK and Ireland. She's worked with groups such as UNICEF and the World Economic Forum. And in 2021, she joined the Lego Group's Creative Play Lab as a Futurology director, where she directs innovation and futures intelligence. She is also currently the founder plus CEO of Futures Forward, a global strategic foresight consultancy. Joana Lenkova, thank you for joining us.
Very nice to be a guest on your webcast.
Yes. So I'm kind of sensing a theme here, whether it's intentional or not, with Disney and Lego around play and creativity. Is that intentional, or is that just part of your general career trajectory?
I think it's intentional, and I think it has to do with my personality. I feel like my entire career I've tried to mix the rational with the creative. So I've been looking for an opportunity to work both sides of my brain. And I think with strategy, it has been quite a lot of focus on business, but with strategic foresight, you get the best of both worlds. You're able to imagine creatively what the future may look like and get inspired, while you're also able to be very practical about what you can do about it today and how to set the course and the direction for the future today.
I love that. I mean, without play and creativity, we can't even imagine what the future might look like. So can you give us some insight into actually what you do as a futurologist and futurist, and then what your career trajectory has been and how that has fed into each of the roles that you've had?
Absolutely. Well, I think the beauty with the fact that futurologist is not necessarily 100% defined is that it's a very inclusive profession, right? You can be a trend forecaster and look at the different trends that are happening today, or you can write scenarios about the future. What I do and how I define my profession, it has a lot to do with my background prior to me focusing on strategic foresight. So I come from a background of marketing and innovation and strategy. And for me, the passion of foresight lies in the intersection between future scenarios and future imaginary worlds and strategic actions, especially in the corporate world where things are set not necessarily with the long-term success in mind. So for me, the challenge is how to make this inspiration for the future, first of all, palatable, because when you talk about a distant future, it's really hard for people to relate. So how to make people feel and understand what the future may look like, but also how to make it practical and how to make it easy for them to take decisions with that lens as well, on top of all the other criteria that they take into account for decision making. So that's kind of the first part of your question. On the second part of your question around my career trajectory, I guess I knew about shell and scenario planning very early in my career, and I have sort of been implementing this type of thinking in my innovation and strategy roles, but I was never really professionally trained to do that. So I didn't have the whole toolkit. And I really got into strategic foresight while I was at the Walt Disney Company. So I held a strategy role there. I joined in 2015, and there were external issues that were happening that affected the business and kind of the already approved annual strategy. So like things like the migrant crisis, I was working in a strategy role for Disneyland Paris. So obviously there was transportation involved, and consumers or customers having to get to France. There were disturbances in France. There was the very unfortunate events of November 2015 with the shootings in France. Then in the UK we started talking about Brexit. So that obviously impacted the consumer confidence, and then we had Brexit. So the pound was fluctuating. And in a situation like that, where you have your strategy fixed for the year, and you have all the data in the world, it's really difficult to understand what the problem might be if you don't look at the external factors.
When you work with the companies that you do, putting on your futures forward hat, what are the ways in which you really hope to influence them? We talk a lot about the fact that you need to think of things. There's three lenses through which to view the future: as an individual, as a team, as an organization. Then it goes beyond that, a society, and kind of the planet as a whole, really, if you think about it. And we're always conscious of that in the work that we do with clients and the conversations that we have. So is there kind of an overarching thing that you always have in the back of your mind when you are doing what it is that you do, that you're always hoping to gently or not usher your clients toward, in terms of how you want organizations to be conscious of shaping the future?
Yeah, there are a few things, and I thank you for sharing your approach. I find it very interesting. There are a few things. So first of all, I have adopted something that I've learned through the Future School, and this is the three environments of foresight. So I usually challenge people to think from the outside and then to the inside and now. And very often, this already provides a whole new plane and challenge for organizations, because we are usually focused on fixing the problem that I have right now without having to think, well, actually, is this problem going to even exist in 5 years' time? Would it be a different problem? Would the solutions be different? And why? It's because the external environment would have changed. So this is one of the things in provocation that I like to use, and I think it's the simplest way to explain why we need to really consider what the question is that we're answering. Then in certain projects and with certain organizations, I do lead with the future of childhood, because again, I think this softens people. I think it's close to everybody's heart. No matter what the project is, once you throw in a challenge of, well, what about the future young generation? And how would you like them to see you? That kind of wakes up people as well. And then I think just making it easier and practical for organizations to be able to take decisions today within the limitations of how they're organized, because the way that companies are organized and incentivized is usually not very long-term focused, but short-term focused. And just giving examples of the living companies, for example, and the traits of the living companies. And yeah, I'm really hopeful that, I think in times of turmoil, people turn to foresight for answers, and it's a good opportunity for all of us futurists to actually enter now the space and make a little bit of change in how people think, even if they don't have the tools. Just challenge them a little bit in terms of thinking, and then we come in as consultants to help with the toolkit if necessary.
Amazing.
I was very passionate about foresight and bringing it to others across different types of organizations and nations. And I left the Walt Disney Company in 2019 to set up my own consultancy called Futures Forward. And that was an incredible experience, actually, because the majority of my experience is from the corporate world, and having the ability to connect to and collaborate with and consult governmental institutions and NGOs in the education sector, for example, it really, really enriched me. And I feel the few years that I was very actively doing this work was an incredible learning experience. And in 2021, this opportunity came along, and it's the very first futurology role for the Lego Group. So I'm the first futurist at the Lego company. Even though, of course, there have been efforts that were done in that field before me. So it was a very difficult decision for me because I really enjoyed my achievements and collaborations within Futures Forward remit. But I thought, what better way to change the world for the better than focusing on the future of childhood and having such an amazing platform to do it. So that's why I decided to join the Lego Group within CPL, which is the innovation department. And I think my personal mission there is I would love to not only create content about the future and think about the future of childhood, the future of play, but also create an infrastructure for just more future fit decision making and future forward decision making. So this is my personal mission there.
I love that. Future fit decision making. It's a great one.
I had an incredible mentor at the Walt Disney Company as well, who was in a corporate strategy role. So very, quantitative, very serious position, but was also very much inspired by foresight and understood the process and understood the whole idea of futures thinking. And he was also very pivotal in the decisions I made further down the line and how I developed. So I'd like to just mention that he's the one who gave me the Harvard Business Review article about the living companies, which is a work that was done for Shell when Shell was nearing its 100 years anniversary. And that so basically this work provided insight into what are the key traits of the longest living companies and thriving companies. And 3 of the 4 traits are also traits of strategic foresight. So it's knowledge, knowing your identity, and basically your strategy and your core, being sensitive to the world around you, and tolerance to new ideas. So that's one of the things that I wanted to say. But in a sense, I think the foresight community, joining the foresight community, has always provided me with incredible support, collaborative attitude, very welcoming, and that's not the case in all professions. So I think it's definitely an amazing place to be, and probably one of the reasons I chose this path down the line.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you mentioned that when you work on future scenarios, you believe in not only talking about the future, but allowing people to feel it and to be a part of it. And you've created a framework. Help me if that's not the right word, then by all means jump in and correct me on that. But it's called Choose Your Own Future, that basically anyone can use to picture and build their future vision. So can you tell us more about that and why it's such a powerful tool?
So the whole idea of that, so Choose Your Own Future is actually the working title of the book that I'm working on. So it will be my first published book. I have participated as a contributor and in other books, but this would be my first one. And the working title is Choose Your Own Future because I felt like there was something missing. The playfulness was missing in business books and in strategic foresight books. And I want this book to be interactive. And I want people to be taken on a journey. And I want people to feel the consequences of their decisions. So it's a book, but it could be much more. And I guess one of the things about that is, yes, it's a framework that combines tools that have been used, but also tools that are specifically created by me to make sure that we are very practical in implementing the foresight ideas and examples. So that I can't really talk a lot about the Lego Group because I'm part of the innovation department, but one of the things that we in the company believe is that people should feel the future. So this is very much aligned with my personal belief of, being able to touch and play with the future, and experiment and experience it as well. And I really, really believe that there is no topic more powerful than the future of childhood, actually, because everybody stops and thinks and doesn't dismiss it.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody about the future of childhood.
Yeah, there's a woman actually called Riane Eisler who is she's about 90 something years old now, and she has written 14 books that have been global bestsellers, Chalice and the Blade, Nurturing Our Humanity, among others. And she's incredible. She's worked tirelessly for easily 6 decades or more to help bring attention to the idea that we need to shift from systems of domination to systems of collaboration and partnership. She talks a lot about one of the cornerstones of this whole thing being childhood, and how between the ages of 0 to 5 are that's the most critical moment, and that we need to pay more attention to nurturing who we are when we're that young, to help develop children to being less impacted by trauma and abuse, and worrying about the future and a lack of security. And because one of the things we also think about a lot is that if we've got all these exponential tools at our disposal, as more and more so as we enter the future, that all can become very, very dangerous in the hands of a group of, young people who are coming up, younger generations, who are disenfranchised, who who suffer from lack of security, who don't have stability, and all of that. So yes, it's something that we feel very passionately and strongly about too. And if you haven't seen or heard of her work, it's incredible. You definitely look her up and check her out. She's amazing.
I will. Thank you very much for sharing that. And as you were saying this, I had a few thoughts, and one of them was, I was reading reports and articles about the impact on kids during the pandemic, and one of them that really impacted me was that girls are a lot more impacted than boys, and women in general, because in certain nations they're just pulled out of school to deal with housework, and they never return to education. And we know that for women that is also the case, with the housework that needs to be done, and that's even if it becomes better in certain societies, it's still definitely more, women are more responsible for that as well. So it's I think a lot about the gender divide, and how much of our behaviors are nature versus nurture, and it's mostly nurture, from what I understand from consulting with professionals and reading about that. But I think we have a responsibility when we are thinking about the future to not only pass messages that empower girls and women, but also make sure that we do it in a way that's inclusive of men and boys. I think it's very important that men champion women, that men show role model, and it's very important to educate boys as well while we do that, because tackling it just from one side, it's never gonna really solve the issue.
Absolutely. I think, encouraging, particularly in our youth, I have twin 14-year-old boys, and, so that is a conversation that we have, is also nurturing their more feminine traits, because it's traditionally seen as being, non-powerful, or not something that boys are supposed to do. Well, actually, we are, as humans, inherently a mix of the feminine and masculine. So to deny either side of that is to deny your inherent nature, which ultimately leads then to problems because we can't not be who we are. So yeah, very much agree that alongside that conversation, and then to make sure that also our young men are not feeling marginalized either in this conversation, as we are, amplifying the voice of women. This is not an either or. It is because we deserve an equal seat at the table and to be equally heard.
No, absolutely. I think we should. I'm even thinking about how we talk to girls and how we talk to boys. I kind of want to get to the part of the conversation where we don't have to isolate and talk about girls or boys. We can talk about wholesome people. This is, I think, where we need to get to.
Absolutely.
I think we're spending too much time focused on technology, and I'm really interested in how humans are going to evolve and how
Right.
being a human can evolve. Imagine being a child born with, voice assistants, and that's probably nothing compared to where technology and AI is going to be in a couple of years' time.
There's also the majorly shifting demographic of where youth are going to be. I mean, it's skewed to the global south, and 42% of the global population is under 30. The shift in generation is happening in Africa and in India. So we also have to get used to the idea that the global landscape is going to look extremely different now. I mean, America has been arguably the center of the world for the longest time. That is shifting. It's already shifted. India, and I mean, we know about China, but India just became the most populous country on the planet. We're not thinking about our youth. We're not talking about how to give them the tools to build a better future, then, I don't like to think about what the future looks like in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, within the foresight community, we are doing certain things like that. One thing I'd like to mention, absolutely on point, what you said is I was just recently invited to be a judge for the new generation foresight practitioners. This is an initiative by the School of International Futures. And, it's just incredible the things that these guys do. This initiative has run for several years now. There are many applicants from all over the world. It was just such a pleasure and such a responsibility to look at and go through and read the different applications. And there are so many people around the world that are trying to make it better. So I guess every little can help. And I think, yeah, we really need to unite and support the youth that is trying to impact the future in a positive way. So I'm glad to be part of this initiative. We're waiting for the results, I think in a month or so. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing it come up. Yeah.
There's a great initiative that happened in London, actually, that was run by the Mayor of London, encouraging young people. I think it was anyone under the age of 4 or under the age of 16 or something like that, that could apply to reimagine one of the city centres in London. And whoever won was going to have their vision actually built out in this urban environment. So, and they made a cool video that was very Minecrafty, and it showed, it animated the vision for how to make this whole city center look very different and inclusive and embrace sustainability. What is inspiring you right now? And it could be a person, art, movement, anything. What's really lighting you up?
I think people in general. There are some incredible colleagues that I work with that I'm super inspired by. Art, definitely. There was a recent exhibition in the Science Museum here in London that I saw, which was about science fiction and how science fiction has actually inspired real life exploration and projects. So for example, a book talking about space exploration, and then NASA actually taking inspiration out of that. And yeah, I read a lot about and think a lot about the future of being human, and the fact that we're part of an ecosystem, and how all of the pieces are, get together to create a whole puzzle. So it's not necessarily only about focusing on the human and satisfying the human needs, but it's also the ecosystem, and how are we going to live in an era where we have AI, where we have traveling to the moon in a couple of years' time, deep ocean exploration as well. While we're looking at the stars, there's so many incredible things that are happening in the water, in the ocean, but also on Earth. One of the other topics that is really of interest to me is, and I think it's also connected to kind of me personally living away from the country I was born in for more than half my life, and just at this age starting to discover traditions that I've missed out on. But I think there is a lot that we can learn from indigenous knowledge, and just really interested in different cultures and traditions. And I really appreciate that. And I think the youth is also turning to, I would say, maybe somebody would call them simpler ways of living, but actually it's more connected to nature. So yes, many inspirations from everywhere.
Oh my God, there are so many places this conversation could go. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for, 4 hours easily.
Likewise.
This, I mean, there's just so many trajectories of each one of these comments and questions. And but is there anything you want to leave us with? Like, I mean, I think inherently futurists tend to be optimistic people, because we are on the side of possibility and opportunity. So as you look to the future, let's say 2050 and beyond, what do you hope for, and what do you think it will look like? What's your wildest, best hope for humanity?
Oh, my best hope for humanity is that we have saved Earth, and that we are leading with kindness, because I see so much kindness in people around me. It's incredible. We're all human beings. It doesn't matter where you come from. There's so much kindness in the world, especially when things get more difficult. And I just want to kind of hang on to that, and be hopeful, and really hope that our systems will allow us to get together with this kindness and hope, and make the world better as much as we possibly can. And this is the best example that we can give to the next generation. Be better for generation better.
I love it. Beautiful.